Reeh Anochi Nosein Lifnechem Hayom Brocha Uklala. With these words, Moshe Rabbeinu begins this magnificent parasha, and he asks us to look and to see that he's offering us a world of bracha, of blessing, and klala, which is the opposite, a cursed world. And what is the difference between them? That the world of a bracha is a world which is a world of purpose and of meaning, of mitzvahs and connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And a life of klala is the opposite, a life of meaninglessness and emptiness, disconnected from the Jewish people and from a life of mitzvahs. And that's what I'm giving you. What is mystifying, though, about this pasuk is, what is it that Moshe Rabbeinu actually wants us to see? Re'ei onochi nos nifnechem hayom. He's asking us to see. This is in sharp contradistinction to all the previous messages in Sefer Dvarim, which have all been about Shema Tishmu, Shema Yisrael, constantly about we're supposed to listen. And it's obviously that we're supposed to listen because Moshe Rabbeinu says to us a few times, Kilo re'isim kol temuna, there was nothing to see at Har Sinai. All there was, Zulosi Kail, there was only the Devar Hashem. We can't see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in fact, the second commandment, Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim, lo sa'aseh lecha pesach v'chol tmuna, forbids any sort of icons or representations or something. This was one of the most radical innovations of the Torah 3,500 years ago in a world of paganism, that there was a God who was not visible. There's nothing to see here. So what is it that Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us to look at? Re'eh, there's something here we can see. So what is it exactly? We can't see Hashem himself, but there is something we can see. So I'm just going to take you down 4 different perspectives on this question, all of which are very true and all of which are mutually compatible and very, very interesting ways of looking at it. The first is the simple one, which is the Baraturim, who says that Re'eh Onochi means look at me. Look at me. And Moshe Rabbeinu here is giving us the secret of the Dugma Ishit, of leading by example. For all future generations, all great Jewish leaders have to know that the way to lead is to lead by example. Baraturim brings down the famous example of Gidon, one of the Shoftim, in Sefer Shoftim chapter 7, where he's got 300 troops and he has to fight against the Midianites and he's heavily outnumbered and he hasn't got time to train his troops. So he says, look, here are the weapons, here's the equipment, follow me, mimeni tiru v'chein ta'asu. Watch me and do what I do. And these 4 words are a magic formula of dugma ishit, of role modeling, which we see in Gidon, which are relevant to every generation. Every generation needs people who are able to, in their own lives, be a dugma, a re'eh onochi, watch me. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu here is saying. Look at me, and if you do what I do, then you'll be living a life of a bracha, a life of mitzvahs, a life of emunah and chesed, and that is the first pshat in re'eh onochi. The Orach Chaim takes this idea one stage further, and he also says re'eh onochi means look at me, but from a slightly different angle. He says, if somebody comes and tells you that the life of Gashmias, the life of materialism, of comforts and pleasures and wealth and power, all that is not worth to spend your life on. You should spend your life on things which are meaningful and purposeful. Maybe he's only saying that because he's just never tasted a Gashmi life properly. Most spiritual leaders have never really been flying first class or driving in a Rolls Royce or having lunch in the Ritz-Carlton. Maybe they just never experienced the height of luxury. Were they to experience it, they wouldn't be so quick to say that that's a life of nothing, that it's an empty life. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, Re'eh Onochi, look at me. I grew up in the house of Paro, in the lap of luxury, surrounded by the greatest wealth and power and pleasure-seeking culture ever known to mankind. And I can tell you, I've been there and done that. And at the same time, I've been on Har Sinai for 40 days. And I've seen the greatest ruchni, the greatest spiritual experience. I've seen them both. Trust me. I'm telling you that one of them is a life of bracha and one is a life of klal. One is a life of meaning, of spiritual values, and one is a life of emptiness and leads to destruction and egoism, and that is Moshe Rabbeinu's message here at the beginning of the parasha. So that's the Balaturim and the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. But then comes along the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva chapter 5. And Rambam dedicates the whole of the chapter to instilling in us the idea that one of the principles, which is an Ikar Godol, he says, a great principle, an Amud HaTorah VaMitzvah, is the pillar on which all Torah and mitzvahs is built. What is that great principle? The principle of Bechira Chofshis, of the free will that a person has to choose how we want to live our life. Says the Rambam, what is an example of one of the psukim which tells us this principle? And he quotes the first pasuk of our parsha. Reeh onochi nosei lifneichem hayom bracha klala. I'm giving you, what is Moshe Rabbeinu giving us? He's giving us a free choice. He's giving us the idea, the concept, that we all have a free choice to decide how we want to live our life. Right? And that actually this is in contrast to a lot of the theories and ideas of intellectuals and thinkers throughout the ages. The Rambam, 8.5 centuries ago, already speaks about most of the non-Jews either think of the world as being predetermined, that we are subject, that all our actions and thoughts and feelings are all subject to forces beyond our control, either psychological predetermination, that we've had early childhood experiences or traumas or genetics or brain chemistry or something going on inside of us, and all that really causes us to behave the way we're behaving, and that we're not, and that the freedom of choice is a myth, as Noah Harari writes notoriously in his completely heretical books, that freedom of choice is a myth. It's a dangerous myth. He says, of course, we're not free. We're just an algorithm of all the different forces that have gone into making us. And therefore, if we knew all the causes, we would know all the effects. And we are just subject to all causes beyond our control. And that is one form of predetermination. There is, of course, also religious, that everything is preordained, that in some way God's knowledge already knows exactly what we're going to do, and therefore we have no freedom of choice, right? There is the Marxist concept of economic predetermination, that we're all subject to economic and material forces which are beyond our control, right? There is Spinoza's determinism. Lots of the great philosophers have come up with different versions of why we have no freedom of choice. But all of them are completely negated by the first pasuk of this week's parsha. Re'ei onochi nosin ifneichem hayom bracha klala. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the choice how to lead your life. Are you going to choose a bracha of mitzvahs and emunah and chesed, or are you going to choose a klala of egoism and kfira and heresy and disconnecting from Klal Yisrael? That is really, says the Rambam, the pshat in the first pasuk of this week's parsha, that Moshe Rabbeinu says, and that's something you can see. You can see what a blessed life looks like. You can see what a cursed life looks like. Just watch carefully and have the eyes to see that indeed the results of following a life of mitzvahs, particularly Parshas Re'eh, deal with some of the most beautiful mitzvahs of tzedakah, of kindness, of looking after the poor. The Torah gives us a life which is honoring the elderly and the parents and society, which is based on accountability and the rule of law and so many different mitzvahs which we can see improve the quality of our lives and deepen our life and the purpose of our life. And that is something, says the Rambam, all depends on our understanding that we have the Bechira Chofshis. Anyone who hasn't read Hilchos Tshuva chapter 5 has missed out something extraordinarily beautiful and profound in the writings of the Rambam. And as we've got Chodesh Elul coming up in a few days' time, it's not a bad time to start revisiting the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva. So that's the third pshat. After the Balaturim, the Orach Chaim, the Rambam, and now the fourth pshat is really something which is just an idea that occurred to me reading through the parsha, which struck me very forcefully, and that is that the first pasuk speaks about us seeing Re'eh, and but it connects to the last pasuk. The last pasuk of our parsha also contains the word Re'eh, the word to see, but in a different format. The last pasuk of the parsha is Shalosh Pa'amim Bashana Yeroeh Kol Zechurcha Panei Hashem. That 3 times a year we've got Aliyah L'Regel. And when we go on Aliyah L'Regel to Yerushalayim, what do we see? We see the Kedusha of Yerushalayim, the light of the menorah. We see the Kohanim, the Kedusha of the Kohanim, the music of the Leviim. We hear and we see, and we are able to see the presence of the Shekhinah in Klal Yisrael. And that is the beauty of Yerushalayim. And in Parshas Reeh is mentioned 15 times. There's no parsha in the whole Torah which emphasizes so much Yerushalayim, the place that is chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, l'shaken shemo sham, where he will have the Shekhinah in Yerushalayim. 15 times. I think in the whole of Sefer Dvarim it's mentioned about 20 times, and 15 of them are in Parshas Reeh. That whatever happens of significance happens b'mokim asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha. And therefore, I think when Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, Re'eh Onochi Nesi Lifneichem Hayom, he's saying, you should see, and where will you eventually see it? You'll see it in Yerushalayim. And in Yerushalayim, there will indeed be things to see. And I believe that the David HaMelech, when he was writing Tehillim, Shir Malos, and he says, he borrows this word from Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, Ure'eh, what will you see? Ure'eh betuv Yerushalayim kol yemei chayecha. You will see the beauty of Yerushalayim your whole life. Ure'eh vonim levanecha. And you will see generations and children and families and Klal Yisrael. These are something which is visible. So there is something visible, and what is visible is in the Kedusha of Yerushalayim, and B'mheira of Yomeinu we should be able to see past all the sufferings and difficulties that we have today in the land of Israel, and be able to see the great Kedusha and the Simcha of Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, B'mheira of Yomeinu.